I'm going to be outing the real killers. I'm going to be delving into what really happened in Moscow, Idaho. Let's get into it, guys. Steve Gonzalez is the drug kingpin. And here is the damning info. Steve supplied to Moscow and Corday Eileen. He worked directly with JJB. He used Kaylee to supply to the university. Xana and Jeff K would buy off of Steve and Kaylee, and is all loaned. JJB, Jesse James Bailey, supplies but expects money later if the drugs are lost. The person who borrowed them now owes the cash equivalent. Demetrius Robinson and Emma Bailey were sent to investigate after 2 weeks of not hearing nothing back from Xana about the flushed drugs. Xana got out of dealing drugs for Ethan, only to have Emma B push her back into it. Maddie flushed $70,000 in drugs over 2 weeks before the Idaho 4 murders. Xana went to the fight club to fight for her life and earn money to pay back some of the $70K. No one knows how much was made, but think Xana was knocked out and lost. Kaylee returned that weekend to resupply Xana, but it was in vain. Maddie flushed $70,000 in drugs. Xana was able to save some and stuck them in a hole in the wall. Unfortunately, the bag of drugs fell into the structure of the house. It's lost until the house is demolished. Demetrius told JJB about the loss well before the hit to the house, and the Idaho 4 DM and BF were spared because their parents paid money to Demetrius to give JJB, and their lives were spared. Why didn't Steve give money and save all their lives? He's a multimillionaire. Steve is the one supplying the drugs to the King Road house. Yes, you heard it here. Steve Gonzalez is a drug kingpin. We keep hearing about Steve's dirty drugs, killing students. Who would think one of the most vocal parents is the one involved in all of this? There's also someone she knows, cartel leaders who were there, who said something about Olivia, Christy, and Steve all went to King Road and stole drugs and money from the house. We don't know if it's true or not, but if it is, more reason for JJB to hit the house. It was said the hit was on Steve Gonzalez, but when they couldn't get him, it changed to the house and the Idaho 4. Brian Kohberger is an innocent man. And I'm going to be getting some information on Brent Kopaka as well. And Demetrius threatened Lana Ornai, and she hasn't spoke to him since then. The cartel is dangerous. Steve is dangerous. Steve is one of the leaders in the drug cartel. I have another piece of damning evidence here. I just gotta find it. Brian Kohberger is not a killer of the Idaho Poor. Even Kara Kernodle doubts he is the killer. We have a group pic of some of those involved taken at the Moscow Axe Throwing Club and sent 2 weeks ago. We have info that says he was arrested in Pullman that night. We see people in the Banfield watching everything go down. There is some lady who even said Steve Jr. paid $6 to watch the live stream. I don't believe that. Please read the comments. People think Steve is involved, and a military intelligence informant said in May, Steve is not who you think he is. You do not know Steve. Now for the information below has been leaked to people associated with those in the drug trafficking ring ran out of the house. Yes, the one that allegedly had Brent Kopaka, Demetrius Robinson, Emma Bailey, Dylan's boyfriend Quinn, and Dylan herself helping out. I don't know who the info came from, but it was sent to several people. This info is very disturbing to hear. After all the work to find the killers, we find out we've been lied to. You want to find the killers? Look at the group picture that was sent 2 weeks ago. Then think about the way you make money through drug trafficking. Here's the damning info. Yeah, we already read that. This case is deeply disturbing as it is, and then you think that you all feel it is okay to blame Brian Kohberger as the killer and put him in front of a firing squad is disgusting. It has been said that Shannon G. and Steve have exculpatory evidence to exonerate BK, but to do so would implicate themselves in shady business. We've heard that for a year now. When you get yourself involved in drug trafficking, you risk the lives of yourself and your family members. You guys should know this. It's time to tell the truth. Steve and Jeff, stop blaming Brian Kohberger and framing him. Go get the real killers and keep your nose out of the drug trafficking, and family won't get killed. Steve, your oldest daughter, Samantha Nelson, the one you have ignored for the past year, loves you and only wants to talk to you like before, but she is now aware of this information and is in disbelief. Lucky she is in Peru for 3 months. Or she might do a TikTok about this. She might anyway. I hope you had a Merry Christmas, because many of us didn't after hearing this, and BK's parents are missing their son. Start to tell the truth. Stop wasting taxpayers' money. You know who killed the Idaho Poor. We hope that you start telling the truth, because YouTube creators have more dirt than we're going to release about OnlyFans and sugar babies, etc. I don't look into that. Others do. I'm only a sleuther and want the case solved. The right killers be arrested and put behind bars. Sorry, I don't believe the shit you've been serving, Steve. The cult of Odin is behind it, as well as the cartels.
my parents' health insurance anymore, and I work for myself doing a bit of everything. So I found a plan for just $34 a month.
All plans cover doctor visits, prescriptions, emergency care, and more. Healthcare.gov is here for you. Enroll by June.
Watch this, guys.
Reference to the phonetic alphabet. You could say A for Adam, B is for boy. In LAPD terms, Adam was used as a prefix to denote a two-officer patrol unit. For example, 1 Adam 12 refers to a two-officer patrol car from Division 1. The number 12 doesn't have a specific meaning and is mostly used to differentiate different patrol units. This term was popularized by the 1960s TV show Adam 12, and it's a popularized LAPD code. You'll find lots of questions online, why do cops say Adam so much? I'm not saying that this is the Adam that they were referring to, but the whole "what'd you tell Adam? I told Adam everything" has been intriguing to anyone, no matter which theorized group you belong to. And of course, I couldn't go without mentioning this particular term. Notably, one of my commenters recently mentioned this. Throw yourself a shout out in the comments because you had your thinking cap on, because I think it's interesting, and it'd be weird for me to have this whole Cops and Ops series without mentioning it. It's also probably a popularized name in religious towns and what have you, so who knows. But I always thought it was just too insane that that would be what she was saying on a random clip that got leaked. Very weird, and how nefarious sounding. Maybe it would be nothing if they didn't go home, or allegedly went home for the last time. Speaking of terms, I want to talk about some things that have been popularized and the myths about drug hits that continue on. It's a complex world, and it's often misunderstood. That is drug-related violence. There are many misconceptions that cloud society's understanding. For starters, many believe that drug-related hits are carried out by unfamiliar, distant figures. We're going to talk about that at length, including the fact that everyone miscategorizes any drug hit as a quote-unquote cartel hit. Not true and far from the complex reality of these crimes. Namely, that it's usually a local group, stemming from a local group of nobodies who know each other but deal drugs, to the bigger groups that actually traffic and are higher up in the organization. Further, there's a common perception that drug-related hits are strictly professional, detached from personal emotions. This is far from accurate. In fact, these brutal acts often intertwine with crimes of passion, betrayal, personal vendettas, and other emotional conflicts. The lines are often blurred between professional and personal, and they can even be triple grouped in with not just hits but crimes of passion, as well as love triangles. All can be interwoven and intertwined in drug-related violence. Another one that I see, which is misleading, is that a lot of people seem to think that these hits are carried out only by hitmen with a gun. Maybe that's because of portrayals in the movies, I'm not sure. But contrary to popular culture, in reality, these hits can be much more brutal. Sharp force violence, otherwise known as one of the grim scenarios that can totally be a part of drug-related violence. We see the same thing going on, I think, personally, with these survivors, who we're all called victim blamers for questioning at all. I think if it were any other community and they were any other class, as far as not being college students, we would see a much different environment surrounding not only the people talking about the crimes and the theories, which are considered wild or grounded in reality. The same could be said for calling something a drug den or a trap house, and people often have a misconception that dictates that its appearance must be run down as hell for that to be a popular term surrounding it, which is completely wrong. Even in my episode where I shared with everyone, like, hey, my dad died in a house that the police didn't give a shit about what happened to him in there because of the type of house that it was. And I had people say, like, no, Meeks, you know if your dad died in the trap house, that a trap house is like a rundown shack. I think it's...
So there's a free website that will help you come up with YouTube video ideas guaranteed to get views.
can say rundown shack, but however they would say, right? So even as I was trying to explain to people, I was still getting comments that the trap house would be some dilapidated, rundown piece of, and that's just not true. It's simply not true. A drug den, a trap house, a party house, they are all essentially places where people gather and drugs are sold and consumed. While some may fit the rundown stereotype, others could be located in seemingly
Oh, and the landlords of that house, they own all the houses on that fucking block. And the name of the LLC is 1122 King Road LLC. And they own all those houses on that block.
average or even upscale neighborhood. In reality, the purpose of a trap house dictates the appearance, even more so than location. Those running the operation might...
And I could tell that when they tore that house down, it was a trap house because you saw how flimsy it was put together. There was no structure to it hardly. It was like a fucking cardboard box.
Find it beneficial to maintain a certain level of normalcy, blending in the community. This avoids arousing suspicion. Often, even though they can be considered quote-unquote party houses, the number of people is usually held at a certain capacity. So the parties will be somewhat tame in the grand scheme of things, or at least that's the case in a lot of well-kept, nice neighborhood, could still harbor a darker purpose type of trap house. And even the darker purpose part depends on the eye of the beholder, right? It may be the light of someone else's night, in their view anyway. I mean, just kidding. What terms mean? The term cartel being used when related to the Idaho 4 is, in my opinion, incorrect, and it's blowing the drug-related homicide theory out of proportion. So while cartels undoubtedly are involved in violent activities and even homicides, these typically occur in the context of territorial disputes and fights for control over trafficking routes and trafficking areas. But they mainly occur in a cartel's home country. The majority of drug-related crimes in the U.S., drug use, selling, possession, are more or less linked to the local groups, and sometimes not even groups, but independent operators, rather than international drug cartels. Moreover, a lot of people blame the cartels for America's drug problem. And drugs trafficked by cartels, of course, do end up in American street. But the main point is that they wind up there through a lot of local intermediaries. So yeah, in the grand scheme of things, cartels do play a role in the international drug trade, but it's an oversimplification to directly link them to all drug-related crime in the U.S. I get it, I know that the feds love to do this, but hello, they also call the Aryan or white supremacy groups that sell and operate prison gangs, because according to them, they have arrested these groups. And we see that the same can't be said for Sinaloa cartel. The leader of Sinaloa and his sons are in jail, but they don't call the Sinaloa cartel a prison cartel. They don't do any of that for any blood, crip, whatever related group that they have for other organized criminal groups. But as long as it's for white supremacy, right, they're a prison gang. So that was my really long way of saying it's all about politics and the way that they distribute this information. And I think a lot of it sometimes boils down to the wrong ideas that Hollywood puts in people's heads. Not just about drug-related activity, but also about court in general. The biggest dispute that I see is over, one, the knives versus guns, and two, over the survivors actually supposedly making it out of the home without everyone in the house dying. I think that a lot of people tend to underestimate the strategic value of knives, for one thing, and the various circumstances that actually make knives among criminal activity not only an easily accessible weapon, but a strategic and valuable asset as far as discretion and hiding that you're doing criminal shit or that criminal shit is going on. Pop, 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 guns aren't that silent. And who knows if that many hours would have been able to go by before someone would have dialed 911 had the assailant been wielding a gun. And come on guys, even Hollywood had this one. Dexter, the number one rule that his godfather gave him was don't use a gun. The ballistics, the traceability, etc., etc., etc.
I've been getting paid $30,000 a month, if not more. Let me show you. Here, I have...
Targeted, it was not targeted. We don't know if it was the residents or the victims that was targeted. Okay, well, obviously something's up with this residence. A, we see the police backing it up, which raises the question, do the police own the house? Were they responsible for the lease? Was it one of the victims? Who had the lease in their name? And how come the families have never been able to go out and enter? Who even knows if they want to enter? But I think that a lot of parents would, and it's just a strange situation altogether. Obviously, something is weird about this house. Now, speaking of that, since we don't know what was going on with the house, we really don't know what would be going on as far as a drug hit and there being 2 survivors. But again, it is simplifying a drug hit to state that everyone would have been murdered had it been drug related, which makes no sense at all. I need you to think about the following scenarios. A, as I've pointed out before, the police can actually rent a house, have their CI rent a house, have their undercover rent a house, and actually run an operation out of the house. Any regular old house that has a lease available for them to rent. There have been situations where people live with their CIs. There have been situations where people live with undercovers. So to state that everyone would have been murdered is to simplify any of those scenarios. It's also to simplify that you could find out you've been betrayed by your own roommates. Now, in a murder scenario, would you be murdered if you were the one who blew the whistle? Therefore, making someone aware of something that they weren't previously, which could have resulted in a homicide or multiple homicides. In that hypothetical scenario, you can see that there would be and can be and are situations where there are survivors and they're not all murdered, but it could still be a drug-related incident. It doesn't make sense to me that it would be something that's not related to some type of operation surrounding the police whenever you consider the lawsuits, and then you consider the school is named in that lawsuit, and then you consider how many times the police kept asking for help and noting that they weren't worried about the situations or activities, only on the homicides over and over and over again. We also see somewhat of a silent situation as far as the friends of any of the victims speaking out. We've also thus far seen silence about the party that Kaylee allegedly came back to the house, allegedly she was moving out.
Yeah. Why all of a sudden are people silent over this alleged party that Kaylee came back to the house for? That's just odd. All of a sudden, this whole party scenario, that DM invited her back to the house for to go to this party/dance, all of a sudden that narrative is dropped. You don't hear no more about that party or that dance. Why is that? And why was there an 8-hour wait to call the cops or to dial 911? I'm starting to believe that email that their parents paid off JJB so they would live.
Out already, or had decided not to stay there, and had only went back for the weekend. Now, I must point out that Kaylee, coming from Drum, was coming from Cooney County, Idaho, Post Falls, and all of the areas that are just as drug-infested as the Boise areas. And sorry to reiterate, but as it's been pointed out by drug investigators for the Idaho and Oregon area, Arizona and Washington are a part of the multi-state groups and even a part of the international drug-related crime in the area. And here we have a house filled with members who are driving home and back and forth from Boise, Cooney County, i.e. Drum, from Arizona, one of the entry points into the country for transnational crime, who was dating someone from Conway, Washington, which is close to the Canadian border. Not to mention that Post Falls itself is not very far from the Canadian border either. You can also see that it's pretty damn close to Spokane. Now, for anyone who doesn't know, this means that whenever traffickers get the drugs from Spokane or larger areas, the further away that they are trafficked, the more the price will get jacked up. So I can imagine that in Moscow, drugs are much higher than they are in Spokane. You can do the math for why that may create a dealer or two broke in college, high school, whatever. Not to mention those that are just grown as fuck and, you know. So again, it'd just be a big mistake to not consider that drug-related incidents and homicides go from crimes of passion to professional hits to a random knife fight in an alley over a small drug debt.
Discover, Dragonair, Silent Gods now.
Another part that simply must become a part of the Cops and Ops series is all of the hoopla that's been discussed about the same cars that you see at a grub truck. Of course, there are cars circling at the grub truck because many of them are the surveillance team, many of them are the communications team, etc., etc. There's a lot of shit going down at the grub truck. Not to mention that fleets of vehicles are involved in organized operations and oftentimes unmarked vehicles too. So that is to say that Idaho State Police will have a certain number of fleet vehicles that they have, and tons of their agents will drive vehicles similar or identical. So I think that is the reason for a lot of the clone cars and trucks that we're seeing around the Idaho 4 crime. So it doesn't mean that those vehicles aren't interesting, I'm just saying. Police fleets and investigative fleets play a vital role in covert investigations, and therefore, of course, a part of crimes.
I had left for work like around 1:45, and I never saw or heard anything. The night before, I was up till like 2 and never heard anything at all, anything out of the ordinary. It's just been crazy just how quiet it's been.
Yeah.
Because we're used to having like some sort of music, hearing music when we
They
come
always
home
had
from
little
work.
gatherings, so they always had music going. So for us, it never assumed anything different. Because there's houses. Yeah, they always the party house. Not necessarily. They had like small gatherings, maybe like 10 people or so, and it never really got crazy. Like the usual college student stuff, but they were actually pretty respectful, considering the house.
I want to give a shout out to the true crime community and the content creators, Nick Geeks, Thou Shalt Not Kill, Rory. You know, without these creators, creators like me and creators like the rest of the true crime community, wouldn't exist without some of these awesome content creators. And I want to be an awesome content creator just like them. And I'm privileged that truth has been helping me. I just want to get that off my chest. Thank you, Rory, for being an awesome content creator, and Thou Shalt Not Kill, and True Crime Design. These are all awesome content creators. I want to be just like them, and I also want to be like Swamp Rose. and JC Evil.
Occasionally there were parties that were kind of loud. Most of the time it was pretty self-contained. But yeah, as I would take my dog in and out to go to the bathroom, I would just be walking by. I would look up and I would see people in the windows almost every night, probably 4 or 5 nights a week. So there were a lot of people that went into and out of that house pretty frequently. So yeah, it was kind of a party house, but again, this whole neighborhood is sort of like a party neighborhood because it's just off campus, so you sort of don't have to follow the university rules.
Another notable that I think belongs in my Cops and Ops series is the stalking incident of Kaylee. Okay, so at first police are putting out over and over again in the police reports that they've not found anything to actually back up these statements that Kaylee possibly had a stalker. Who knows who actually said this? Her family never seemed that interested in it. We know that some dude at the vape shop said that the girls were discussing it whenever Kaylee was there to purchase vape from them. So this could be either one of two things. One, either Kaylee could have been working with police and someone noticed that she always tends to have backup, or someone around, quote unquote, stalking her, right? Surveilling her. So there's also the possibility that those payments that were going to Kaylee from the roommates could have been because, as I said, Kaylee could have been the girl to hit up for goods and services. That doesn't mean anything bad, and people shouldn't feel like she deserved it any more than when they thought she was as pure as the driven, or undriven, yeah, the undriven snow, whatever, you know what I mean. And I really hate that we're living in a world where I have to throw in this disclaimer, but just so no one gets the wrong idea, she didn't deserve to die, okay? So, moral of that point was that the stalker incident morphs into a statement on the King Road homicide page from the NPE website. And they actually claim on that statement, under the Kaylee Stalker section, it's not funny, but so under that "Did Kaylee have a stalker" section, it reads, quote, "Using tips and leads, investigators have identified an incident involving Kaylee at a local business, which may have been the stalker reference she made to friends and family. In mid-October, 2 males were seen inside a local business. They parted ways, and one male appeared to follow Kaylee inside the business. As she exited to walk toward her car, the male turned away, and it did not appear that he made any contact with her. Detectives contacted both males and learned that the two were attempting to meet women at the business, and this was corroborated through additional investigation. Based on the available information, the detectives believe that this is an isolated incident and not an ongoing pattern of stalking. No evidence suggests that the 2 males were involved in the murders. Investigators continue looking into information about Kaylee having a stalker. Information about a potential stalker or unusual occurrences should go through the tip line, unquote. Okay, so assuming that this was like another controlled buy, the 2 males were observed entering a business separately, with one of them appearing to follow Kaylee. The observed behavior where 2 individuals separate here is how in the hell, months into the investigation, did we even get this update? And what were police searching that made them find a random surveillance video from mid-October, which equated Kaylee to men who later were questioned by NPD? That's weird to me. That's weird as hell to me, actually. But who cares what's weird to me? Oh, this is my series? Oh, damn. Okay, I guess I'm supposed to put what I find weird here.
Well, I hope this has all been very informative for you guys. We now know who's really behind it. Steve G, Emma Bailey, Jesse James Bailey, Demetrius Robinson, Brent Kopaka. Brian was never there. He's being set up as a patsy. Did you ever find it funny why Emma Bailey and Demetrius was charged with the death of that one student, and all of a sudden their charges were dropped? You find that kind of funny? So do I.
Government and legal analysts alike.
Alright, you guys have a good night, and I'll keep digging. Peace out.